I don't think I've ever seen anything like this happen where a game gets announced and then a day later it gets canceled. I'm referring to a game known as Postal Bullet Paradise, which is indeed a part of that Postal series, and it all basically ties to usage of AI that the community found unacceptable. Before we delve further into this topic, let's check out the trailer for Postal Bullet Paradise, where this whole situation began. Here's what that looks like.
The city's average rating has once again reached its optimal value. According to the latest sociological survey, citizens across the city report no reasons for regret.
So what people very quickly noticed
Happiness index increased by 2.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
is that a lot of the assets
Regarding the recent drop in your social rating.
shown here are AI generated, especially these pixelated sprites. It didn't take long for people to realize that this was all most likely GenAI.
Complaint and found that there was an algorithmic error. Your rating was lowered by mistake.
And there was this general sense that there was something very generic looking about this game. It's basically a first-person vampire survivors-like.
We'll make sure this never happens to you or your friends again.
But its art direction, its visual language,
If there's anything else I can do for you, you know where to find me. Have a wonderful day.
Shit. What the hell was that all about? Well, I guess I'll find out soon enough.
something that people immediately found suspicious. This is a game that was being developed by Goon Swarm Games and published by Running with Scissors, essentially the original developers of the Postal series, who essentially allowed Goon Swarm to license the IP and in partnership with Running with Scissors, work on this Postal game called Postal Bullet Paradise. But it didn't take long before the game was lambasted by the Postal community for the usage of AI that is incredibly obvious to spot. So right here we have on the official Postal subreddit 26 days ago, somebody saying that Running with Scissors using AI is incredibly disappointing. Quote, the new trailer for Bullet Paradise dropped and you can see very clearly that all the pixel sprites are AI generated. The mouths don't make sense, the pixels are wobbly, the shading is weird, it's super obvious. The developers of the game have used AI before as well, and so it's not surprising that they would use it for this too. It just sucks that Running with Scissors is going down the AI path since they've been so supportive of art for a long time. I've genuinely never seen a studio that cares so much about their fans' art. You could draw a photo of the Postal dude sucking himself off, and Running with Scissors would still repost that shit. It's disappointing to see them go so far against that by using AI on this already shit-looking game. And then in the comments below, you've got people pointing out screenshots that further highlight how obvious it is that AI is being used. Stuff like this, like the art style, you can tell it's very generic AI. Like a lot of AI art is very homogenous in its visual language and art style. And yeah, I've seen stuff like this before. Like when Call of Duty Black Ops 7 literally used AI assets for some of their in-game stuff. Like a lot of the artwork looked very similar to this. It's not that hard to spot. Now, before we delve into further details, you know what is a technology that society has actually benefited from? HDMI. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, HDMI LA. Many of you are no doubt familiar with HDMI technology. It's built into the silicon of just about any device with display input and or output such as TVs, PCs, laptops, gaming consoles, monitors, cameras, and more, offering best-in-class picture and sound. For gaming in particular, it's got features that are key to sharp and beautiful visuals, immersive audio, as well as smooth and responsive gameplay. With resolutions and refresh rates of 1080p 500Hz, 4K 240Hz, or even 8K 60Hz in 10 and 12-bit color formats. And you can push this technology as far as 16K 60Hz. With features like variable refresh rate, which reduces lag, stutter, and screen tearing for smoother, more fluid gameplay. Auto low latency mode, which automatically switches displays into their lower latency mode for responsive control. Quick frame transport, which reduces display latency and improves real-time responsiveness and VR experiences. Dynamic HDR, which is the best color, brightness, and contrast on a frame-by-frame basis. Enhanced audio return channel, which enables high bitrate immersive sound formats like Dolby Atmos and DTS-X, and more. There's a reason why every major gaming console like PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and Nintendo Switch 2, as well as gaming PCs, be it desktop towers, gaming laptops, or gaming handheld PCs like Steam Deck and ROG Ally X, among many others, all utilize and feature this technology. And if you want to learn more, you can use my link in the description and comment section below. HDMI LA will also be present at CES 2026 with their own booth to show off gaming demos to further highlight the capabilities of HDMI technology, so be sure to check them out. All right, so back to this topic. Worth noting about this specific screen grab right here is that it comes from a promotional art that was made to put on thumbnails for, like trailers for this game. That thumbnail looks like this. And you can see the full spectrum of characters here that very much, you can just tell they are AI generated. They all have what people are calling the generic AI scream facial expression that is just very easy to spot. And making matters worse is that the developers try to absolve themselves of guilt by putting out the PSD file that, they claim highlights that it's not AI generated art, that this was made by real artists and was made from scratch. But what people noticed is basically the PSD file provided close-ups that further allow people to prove that this is indeed AI generated, with people saying things like the PSD file for the Postal Bullet Paradise promo art includes the original images that were used to make the AI vectorized final images, as well as some of the final shots have crappy AI versions under them. Plenty of posts on the day the trailer was released highlighting and questioning whether AI was utilized, many suspecting that that was the case. And going to Goonswarm Games' official Steam page, you can see right here that if you look at their games, even in their thumbnails, it's readily apparent that they do in fact use AI, and they did use AI in past releases. If you look at SCP control error here, this is very clearly AI art. I don't even have to be an expert to know. You scroll through their games, through their artwork, through things that they've published, and it's very readily apparent that GenAI is something that this studio heavily relies on. And not just even for concept art and for ideas exploration, just straight up, they ship games with GenAI assets in them. And that's a big no-no, with GenAI often being perceived, rightfully so, as essentially a giant plagiarism machine. Shipping final products with GenAI assets in them usually gets very easily spotted, very quickly called out, and comes with just essentially PR shitstorms worth of backlash. Now, Running with Scissors ultimately being responsible for the Postal series, a lot of the backlash fell on them for authorizing a studio that uses GenAI to make a new Postal entry that features GenAI art in it. And what didn't help matters is that Running with Scissors got incredibly defensive when GenAI criticism was levied against them, to the point where they were essentially insulting anyone who would not accept that no GenAI was used, even though for a lot of people it was very obvious that this was indeed the case. And the ultimate culmination of that is that Running with Scissors did eventually cancel Postal Bullet Paradise just the day after its announcement. If you go to SteamDB right now and look up Postal Bullet Paradise, you can see that there's a notification here stating that this app has been retired and is no longer available on the Steam store. And if you try to look for this game, you essentially get taken back to Steam's homepage. This game has literally been eradicated from the face of the earth. It's quite literally been canceled and will not see a release unless it's somehow revived later down the line and all of the GenAI stuff is removed. And that is because Running with Scissors made the executive decision to finally accept the criticisms that GenAI was used, and they finally made the stance that this was not acceptable. Here's the statement that they released after, much chagrin, after getting defensive for a while before finally taking responsibility. Quote, "After revealing Postal Bullet Paradise, a title Running with Scissors was planning on publishing but not developing, we've been overwhelmed with negative responses from our concerned Postal community. The strong feedback from them is that elements of the game are very likely AI generated and thus has caused extreme damage to our brand and our company reputation. We've always been and will always be transparent with our community. Our trust in the development team is broken." So they're basically trying to say that we didn't realize that Goonswarm Games was using generative AI for this new Postal project. They truly believe that no GenAI was used, but after looking further into it, it does look like GenAI was used, and they're making the stance that this is not acceptable, that this has done a lot of damage, that their trust in Goonswarm Games has been broken, and they've ultimately decided that they want to kill Goonswarm Games project, this new Postal game that was essentially seeing a shitstorm of feedback. Going back to the trailer, you can see that the likes to dislikes ratio is extremely unfavorable, and people are making fun of how all of this played out with, Postal Bullet Paradise being announced on December 3rd, 2025, and then the next day on December 4th, 2025, getting killed by the publisher. And indeed, you can see right here that this trailer was in fact published on December 3rd, 2025, and that the statement from Running with Scissors came in on December 4th, 2025. So yeah, the cancellation of this game was incredibly swift. The rest of the statement concludes with, we have a lot of good things coming. Some of you know and some of you don't. Since forming Running with Scissors in 1996, we've always said that our fans are part of the team. Our priority is to always do right by the millions who support the Postal franchise. We're grateful for the opportunity to make the games we want to play, and we'll continue to focus on our projects and updates coming in 2026 and beyond. We can't wait to share more. Now, even if Running with Scissors did eventually take some responsibility, even if they eventually did decide to cancel the game and do something about the fact that GenAI was used in their franchise, the way they handled this situation prior to the statement did not help matters. It did not ultimately help them redeem themselves because of the way they conducted themselves when the community relayed the criticisms and the feedback. So people, for example, are highlighting right here so when are y'all going to apologize or walk back your insults on your own fans for calling this shit out? Heads need to roll and fast. You can see right here, if we bring up this screenshot, you can see that representatives of Running with Scissors are responding to comments like, Running with Scissors really using AI for the new game, huh? With, you're an R word for believing we do. And then the response they got later was, you cannot tell me the thumbnail for the reveal trailer isn't AI generated. And then here we have a response from the co-owner of Running with Scissors, Mike Jarrett, who straight up insisted that it's literally not made with GenAI. Sorry, guys, your wet dream is wrong. Dead fucking wrong, he insisted, and was very sure about that statement until he wasn't. Other folks also posted of other comments that Mike Jarrett made in response to GenAI accusations. Comments like, if anyone has an AI accusation, just quit the server. They can literally eat my shit. So on and so forth. It's just insult. It's not even like a respectful denial or a respectful, like, we're going to look into this. It's just like, you suck if you believe anything these people are saying. These accusations are wild, and I resent anyone who brings these accusations to us. Basically, like, F you. Like, Running with Scissors basically flipped off anyone who would dare question if GenAI was used for this new title, which, as it turns out, it did. By Running with Scissors' own admission here, which is why they decided to kill the project. They did later come out with a statement saying, we'd like to, of course, apologize to anyone who felt insulted in the heat of the moment, and we thank you for raising concerns at the time. As for those who specifically sent us death threats, the apology does not apply. And there we have another misstep where they didn't apologize for their own actions, but they apologized that people felt insulted. And that's why in responses, you've got comments like, this is what clueless corporations say when they're too cowardly to admit fault. Felt offended, fuck off. You try to act like you're rebels, but you're no different from EA or any other large game company. Your employees didn't offend people. You fucking lied and insulted fans, which, yeah, is exactly what happened. And people are baffled that they would have the audacity to put out this statement after the insults that Running with Scissors dished out to fans, being that extremely confident that GenAI wasn't used, only to find out that they were indeed wrong and that fans were indeed right. So apologizing for anyone who felt insulted is rather in poor taste when you should be apologizing for the way you treated fans and for the way you treated that feedback. And then the day after the game got canceled, in other words, 2 days after the game was announced, Goonswarm Games came out with this statement that is also very passive aggressive and just very defensive, stating, quote, we have shut down the studio. From what I understand, Running with Scissors canceled the project, and then Goonswarm Games came out and just decided we're shutting down the studio in its entirety, stating, quote, our project and everything we built over the past 6 years was canceled in just a few days. Our studio was mistakenly accused of using AI-generated art in our games, and every attempt to clarify our work only escalated the situation. In the last few hours, we've received a large number of threats, insults, and mockery, which pushed us toward a very difficult decision. We're truly sorry for the artists who put their soul into this and supported our studio, only to face false AI accusations. It's tough to pour so much energy into a game and end up caught in the middle of an AI war by accident. We have decided to shut down the studio and end all future activities. Thank you for being with us. Stay strong, play games. So basically, they resorted to playing the victim and trying to garner sympathy, and that did not go particularly well. In the responses, you'll find top comments like, LOL, you shut down after 6 years of work because of a mistaken accusation? WTF. Either this is a lie or you're too fragile for this world. Imagine what would happen if your game received a negative review, LOL. That's the thing. No studio that is being accused of something that is false that they can prove down the line would take an action like this. It feels like the only reason Goonswarm Games shut down is because they got caught and they know that their reputation can't be recovered, shutting down as a way to be to essentially rage quit, trying to garner sympathy in that way, But people are seeing past this. Like, nobody's getting fooled by this. Here's another top comment saying, yeah, sure, man, whatever you say, acting like a victim and showing this meme of this dog playing the victim. And then other folks highlighting some of this studio's Goonswarm Games' past works that just very clearly indicates Gen AI usage. Like, one look at this, you don't even need to analyze this. You don't need an expert to look at this to see that this is definitely Gen AI. And so here's a top comment saying, mistakenly accused of using Gen AI art, in quotes, yeah, sure, totally a mistake. And then highlighting that this is not the first time something like this has happened. This has been a repeated pattern. In the quote tweets, you'll find plenty of people making fun of this statement, with somebody here saying time is a never-ending cycle, all while posting this meme of gets criticized once, fucking dies, garnering millions of views and, hundreds of thousands of likes. All they had to do was apologize, say that they're never going to do that again, that they are going to replace all of the assets with real artists' work, and then move forward. But instead, they proceeded by further lying to audiences, by attempting to play the victim, and essentially treating the community like they're stupid, wagging their fingers at other people, claiming false accusations when, the community was entirely right, and when the community had a very strict moral stance against the way Gen AI was being used in this game. Like, in that scenario, you either double down on Gen AI and just admit that that's the way you make games and face the consequences of that, of your community being against that and you insisting on continuing to do that, or you apologize and change your ways. Those are the two options. But instead, like, pointing the finger at people who rightfully accuse you, then, pretending like you got victimized and then rage quitting is just kind of like the worst way you can respond to this. Now, look, death threats and all that stuff, that is not acceptable. No matter what circumstance, I don't care how offended you are. Like, sending death threats to people is just a disgusting maneuver, and that makes you no better than the perpetrators. But in general, there was also legitimate feedback of people who are just adamantly against Gen AI, which is like seemingly the majority of the gaming community, calling that stuff out, and Goonswarm Games just playing denial and playing stupid and playing the victim. And that was just never going to go down well. And then the day after that, on December 6th, 2025, 2 days after the game was shut down and 3 days after it was announced, Goonswarm Games released another statement where they backpedaled and admitted, essentially, that Gen AI was indeed used. Here's the full statement in question, quote, "Dear gamers, we want to start with a sincere apology to everyone affected by this situation, the community, our partners, and especially the artists who supported us. The last few days have been overwhelming. As a small studio suddenly pushed into the spotlight, we reacted emotionally and defensively. The accusations came as a shock, and we needed time to breathe, look at everything calmly, and understand what truly happened. After taking that time and conducting an internal review, we agree with your criticism. Their promo art does appear to include or be influenced by AI-generated material. We collaborated with external artists for years and never saw any signs of this. The layered PSDs always looked legitimate within our internal pipeline, which is why our initial reaction was to protect our team and defend our innocence. We understand now that your concerns were valid, and we take responsibility for not catching this earlier. We also want to stress that this issue relates only to the promo art and does not concern the real artists who worked on gameplay visuals, assets, and other content. Many of them have nothing to do with the situation, yet they have been receiving threats, harassment, and hatred. This is deeply unfair, and we hope this message helps protect them. Their work is real, and it deserves respect. We previously announced the closure of the studio, but even in this state, we feel responsible for the outcome. As far as our remaining resources allow, we will replace all disputed promo art across our projects with pieces created entirely by human artists. It will take time, but we will do it. We again apologize to everyone who was harmed or affected by the situation. We never intended to mislead anyone, and our earlier statements reflected what we honestly believed at the moment." So they're now trying to claim that the only use of AI-generated art was for that promo art, for the thumbnail that was used for the trailer, and that the in-game assets, like, the pixel sprites and all that stuff, was made by real artists. But the thing is, like, even if that's true, at this point, trust has been so shattered that it's hard to believe anything they say. Responses have not been kind, with people saying things like, is this studio run by 12-year-olds? Jesus effing Christ. Or, here we have a top comment saying, yesterday, our studio was mistakenly accused of using AI-generated art. And then finally, now they're admitting that they did in fact use Gen AI. So, got a pair of glasses overnight or something. Like, a lot of people just feel like they cannot trust Goonswarm Games, and they cannot trust that they truly didn't know, and that only after an internal review they came to the realization that AI-generated artwork was indeed used. A lot of people feel as though that backpedaling was a response that they put out simply because the backlash against this statement that is in denial, that plays the victim, got so bad that they eventually realized that the jig was up and they had to put out like a more proper, more respectful statement. But the damage was already done, and the fact that they're shutting down their studio as a result of these accusations just gives the look of like they're not willing to learn from their mistakes and move forward, but they'd rather rage quit than to actually correct their mistakes. People are also finding hard to believe that Goonswarm Games had no idea that GenAI was used for their new Postal game, especially when their past games all indicate flagrant usage of AI, especially for cover art like this one right here. And then on top of all that, they said that they're going to do everything in their power to ensure that all of the GenAI assets are removed and replaced with art from real artists. It is now December 29th, 2025. This statement right here from Goonswarm Games, where they apologized and admitted fault and culpability and said that they are going to replace all of the GenAI art with real art, was published on December 6th, 2025. It's been 23 days now, and all this artwork has remained basically the same. The AI artwork is still there, so they haven't actually taken any steps to like actually start to make amends and to show that they are being proactive about this whole situation. It feels like they've just decided to entirely abandon all of this. And so yeah, this all just feels like a shitstorm of denial, of playing victim, of not fulfilling promises, lying, and, you know, treating the community who rightfully criticized them just like crap, insulting them, and just looking down on them when what they were trying to do is just call out a practice that just wasn't in line with what they believed of Running with Scissors, especially in particular. And now Running with Scissors is entirely trying to separate themselves from this whole situation, entirely separate themselves from Goonswarm Games, responding to Goonswarm Games' most recent statement where they apologize and all these things by tweeting the following image with the following statement, quote, "Following our statement on Friday, Running with Scissors would like to share an update. While we needed to cut ties with Goonswarm Games on Friday and state the reason for doing so, our broken trust, we still wanted to give Goonswarm the time and space to be transparent about what had occurred. After sharing a tweet on Friday that got more than 8.5 million views, which denied they used generative AI and were closing the studio, on Saturday, Goonswarm Games issued a follow-up tweet acknowledging the use of generative AI and apologizing. We wish them all the best as we both move forward our separate ways. Running with Scissors has always operated with unwavering commitment to the truth and transparency. We look forward to continuing to support our fans and expand on the Postal universe played by millions." But the damage, again, is already done. People are not taking kindly to Running with Scissors' attempt to take accountability because they're not taking accountability for other things like the way the co-owner of this company and other representatives of Running with Scissors literally insulted fans who brought up the criticism of how GenAI was clearly used for the game. So people are posting things like, so when will y'all acknowledge these? Highlighting the insults that were dished out against the community. Here's somebody else saying, let's not offload the blame when their recent games are literally AI slop. Highlighting cover images on Steam that clearly show generative AI was used prior to the development of this new Postal game. That Goonswarm Games has a habit of using Gen AI. So part of the question is, how could you, Running with Scissors, have not seen and looked into this Goonswarm Games development studio? How could you not have known that Gen AI would be used in this game and that it was something, a practice that was commonplace with their past titles as well? It feels like they either feigned ignorance or their quality assurance and, their ability to spot stuff like this is just like really poor, and so a lot of people are seeing this as either incompetence or willful ignorance. The co-founder literally called the community, the people who brought up Gen AI, like ignorant assholes who continue to accuse of using AI, and if you still think that the key art was made with AI, you can just excuse yourself from our Discord. Comments like those, like, people will not forget that. And Goonswarm Games continued to insist, despite how obvious it was that Gen AI used, that no Gen AI was used whatsoever. So, for example, they provided this direct statement to news outlet PC Games N when accusations started flying around. They said, no generative AI was used for the reveal trailer or for the game. All assets were created by our human artists using standard tools. We have already shared layered PSDs, work in progress files, and other materials to confirm this. Any mistakes or rough spots in those files are being misinterpreted as proof of AI, but they simply reflect the normal human art creation process. And so yeah, the end result of all of this is that Postal Bullet Paradise has been completely eradicated by fan backlash against AI. Goonswarm Games as a studio has completely shut down because instead of, just moving forward and doing better in the future, they've decided to rage quit while playing the victim and wagging the finger at people before realizing how bad of an idea that was, and then issuing an apology that people are just not entirely buying and don't feel is entirely sincere given all that happened with that studio. And on top of that, the company behind Postal, the publisher of Postal Bullet Paradise and the developers of past Postal games, Running with Scissors, their reputation has essentially tanked, especially because of their lack of accountability when it counted, when it really mattered. And even in their apology, it doesn't feel like they really apologize for their actions. They're apologizing for how people feel. It just feels like there's been a lot of dishonesty, a lot of denial, a lot of trying to deflect, and a lot of insulting the community and then suddenly trying to appeal to them because they realized that shit hit the fan and they got in really hot waters because of the way they reacted to this whole situation. And so, this is kind of the whole situation, and all this highlights, yet again, how adamantly the gaming community is against generative AI. AI as a tool has its good uses, but GenAI in particular, and the way that's being exploited by corporations and by certain, development studios and publishers, just to essentially try to take shortcuts, the way that particular use of AI is being stigmatized is something that a lot of people are seeing as a positive, given how that technology and that particular use of the technology has proven to be nothing more than a detriment to art, to developers, to consumers. It steals art. It allows companies to take shortcuts, replace workers, and then make worse products that they then sell to customers. It's a way of cheapening everything and being stingy about everything rather than a tool that genuinely enhances art like video games. So seeing the GenAI backlash and seeing that it actually had a tangible effect, I'd mark as a positive development, this particular use of GenAI that's more egregious than anything. But that is ultimately one man's take, and this is everything you need to know about what happened with Postal Bullet Paradise, why this game was shut down just a day after it was announced, and all of the fiascos and statements and bullshit and all of the drama, if you will, that happened between the community and Running with Scissors as well as Goonswarm Games. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.